a smarter way to mop? Try to Swiffer power mop. And only one cleaning tool.
I have packages upon packages of teeth, and I don't know where I put them. I put them in a safe place, and I don't know where that is. I can't order anymore because I don't have time.
Hi, it's early afternoon. It's a good time for a banger in the oven.
Nice, cold open, love it.
Let's see. This is a 5 hour, so we'll listen to this for a while.
The root trees are loading. Okay. Oh my god, okay. Zoom out.
Oh, the root trees. I already did this one. I don't want to listen to it anymore. Oh no, this is something else. Okay.
The root trees are loading. Okay. Okay. Zoom out. So this is the first part we did. Holy Jesus. And now we're gonna do this. Okay, so it's not as intimidating as the top actually. I thought it was, or maybe it's bigger. They might ask us to do it, I think, as we go. Okay, so we're starting with 3 things. Notable events. 6 pieces, retrieve, rift. Clark after you rue, 5 Ps. Retrimania, Anonymom. Anonymom. So there's 11 hints in this evidence. I think 11 hints about identities. So we'll have to be sharp. Please help me. Today's August 3rd, 1999. It has been 8 months since she helped Sam Madsen with the research necessary for her book. Sam was true to her word and paid you an incredibly large sum of money. She never mentioned you by name, however, so he's managed to keep a low profile. The root trees, on the other hand, have not. Below is a summary of notable events since the book's release, though you can refresh your memory in full detail by searching online. 6 pieces. Sam Madsen's book about Elias Roottree was released in February. It was a bestseller for a few months. At the time, Carla had not yet been replaced. In March, the Roottree company stumbled publicly as they attempted to respond to the book's release with multiple conflicting press releases and a clear lack of leadership. Oh, so the family broke apart over how to address it.
Trying to find something. I want to listen to. I don't really want to listen to music. Yeah, nobody's here anyway. That's a new one.
Look at this Whopper. Now look at this Whopper. Does this Whopper make you want to buy that Whopper? No, you would feel lied to. And Burger King just got into some hot water because of it. Hello, Internet. Welcome to Food Theory, the channel where having it your way doesn't lead to legal ramifications. But I can't say the same thing about Burger King. Back in March 2022, 19 folks from 13 different states formed a class action lawsuit against Burger King, alleging that their IRL Whoppers don't measure up to the juicy, fresh, delectable-looking Whoppers in their advertising.
No shit.
They're saying the King is exaggerating the size of his meat. Men, Am I right? They claim Burger King is using oversized meat patties and ingredients in their ads and menu displays
Obviously
to
they
make
are.
it clear that the burgers are approximately 35% larger in size with nearly double the amount of meat. Now, if your first instinct hearing this was, yeah, duh, it's an ad, you'd be on the same page as most other judges that have thrown out similar cases over the years. I mean, what are Burger King, McDonald's, and Wendy's supposed to do? Use their real burgers for ads? No one would ever go back. But what makes this lawsuit notable is that the judge presiding over the case has decided that the claims might actually have some merit. Instead of throwing the case out like so many others have done, the judge is having it his way and making the king stand trial and defend his burger. So today, I want to look into whether or not his monarchy will crumble. Does it actually look like BK broke the law, or is this lawsuit just a greasy, fast food, fast cash grab? Like I mentioned, BK is the only fast food or fast casual establishment that's been hit with a lawsuit alleging deception. In May 2022, a man filed a lawsuit against McDonald's and Wendy's for unfair and deceptive practices due to false advertising in their ads and on their menus. The burgers, he claimed, were the most egregious, and accused Wendy and Ronald of undercooking their meat to make them appear 15 to 20% larger than the beef patties that were actually served to customers, since the fully cooked patties tend to shrink and look less appetizing. Likewise, Taco Bell was hit with a lawsuit by a guy claiming that they used double the meat in their photos and commercials during 2023, when certain ingredients, like meat, were struck by inflation, causing price significantly less meat, beans, and other fixins than they do in the ad. Starbucks was accused of skimping on fruit ingredients in their refreshers. Buffalo Wild Wings was accused of not using meat from a chicken's actual wing in their burgers buffalo. Subway was accused of using 200% less meat in their IRL sandwich, and the list goes on. Oftentimes, like in the cases of McDonald's and Wendy's, the judge will throw out the case, citing that the reasonable average customer would most likely not be misled by advertisements, and that the images of food put forth by these chains were no different than other companies' use of visually appealing images to foster positive association with their products. Translation, everybody exaggerates their product in ads, and most people know that. But the lawsuits against BK and Starbucks were allowed by judges to move forward, denying the respective establishments' motions to dismiss their trial. In the case of Starbucks, the judge determined that a significant portion of reasonable consumers would assume that all of their refreshers contained real fruit based on their menu signs and advertisements. And it seems that the judge facing down the Burger King is heading down the same road. The lawsuits against B-Dubs and Subway are still pending, but if Burger King and Starbucks are found guilty of deceiving their customers, we might start seeing a shift in how these false advertisement cases are handled. So what exactly is the line between deception and reasonable exaggeration? At what point does an appetizing advertisement become a straight-up lie? And what are the parameters already in place to prevent these companies from going too far? To start answering some of these questions, it's helpful to understand the history of staging food for consumers' eyes. In the 1930s, color film photography allowed food to be captured realistically, almost exactly as it appeared to the naked eye. Advertisers started using color around this time in images of their products, and cookbooks began implementing colorful images into the pages of their recipes, bringing dishes to life that were formerly dull and black and white. Commercial food photography blossomed as a new career path, and companies found that their goods sold better when their customers could actually visualize what an all-American Thanksgiving dinner would look like. But it didn't take long for advertisers to realize that they could exaggerate a little bit to get consumers even more excited about their products. Food and beverage brands began implementing behind-the-scenes tricks to get the food in their images to look even better than the real thing, like swapping out melty scoops of ice cream in a dish for a thick hunk of mashed potatoes. Under a photographer's hot lights, cold food would melt, lettuce would wilt, and hot food would lose its juicy, steamy sheen. So they improvised. Oil was painted onto dry food to make it look fresher, and hairspray or deodorant was applied when a more matte look was needed. Honestly, all the tricks used in food photography are astounding. It's actually a really cool art. Ironically, although it was initially invented to accurately capture an image of real life, the introduction of color development ultimately led to less of an interest in realistic, authentic depictions of food. A homemade hamburger just wasn't as appealing to look at as a burger expertly crafted by an art director, and consumers started gravitating to brands that showcased their food in an idealized way, the way folks wanted their food to look like. even if it wasn't true to life. This shift completely changed the way humans engaged with the meals they ate. It was no longer enough to simply taste the delicious meal. People wanted to savor these dishes with their eyes, too. Chefs began to consider the preparations of their meal as seriously as they considered the flavors, learning to create visually appealing plates that were
Hey, baby.
for both the eyes and the stomach. Food stylists
What's up?
likewise began to experiment with different
Y'all done
props,
outside for now?
backgrounds, and light.
Okay, if you need anything, let me know. Your food is on the couch.
To enhance
I love
and
you.
highlight different colors and textures.
Come
Food
on.
photos were staged
What do you
to
need?
tell a story about the preparation,
Just a minute.
origin, and cultural significance.
What do you need? Show me. Alright, lead the way. Shit. Well, that didn't work. What? You don't want that? What do you want? Come on, I'm busy. He wanted me to open the other door so he could go out on the neck.
Of their subject, allowing consumers to immerse themselves
Oh, hi. Sorry, I'm not joining anything today. I've got a little bit too much work to do. But thank you.
fully in the dining experience. Brands today are still using these exact same techniques, but advancements in technology only expanded their playing field. Once upon a time,
Don't waste your money on cheap dirt. Get the real deal with Miracle Grow. Packed with essential nutrients to grow strong, healthy roots. Miracle Grow garden soil is your secret sauce for a healthy, beautiful garden. Miracle Grow. No better way to grow. XL Refreshers. Do it feels fresh.
it was enough to sell an ice-cold bottle of Coca-Cola in a flat black and white image. Now, Coke has a CGI polar bear and a bright red Christmas sweater convincing you to drink black. Today, many companies have strict policies only allowing real food in their ads, which means that mashed potato ice cream is fair game. But that isn't always the case. And even modern food stylists have admitted to using non-food enhancements to make their dishes pop in photos and commercials. Need to make a stack of buttermilk pancakes look extra rich and syrupy? Try dousing them in engine oil. Has the skin of your Thanksgiving turkey started to dry out after the third day of shooting? Slap a coat of wood varnish on there to make it look moist and golden brown again. Cereal looking soggy after soaking in milk? Replace that milk with an inedible combination of water and PVC glue to keep your Cheerios looking fresh on film. Then there's all the sneaky props used in staging to make the food appear flawless. If you've ever wondered why burgers you grill at home look lackluster, it's probably because you're not wedging pieces of cardboard or chunks of a makeup sponge between toppings to make them look less droopy. You're also probably not painstakingly gluing the perfect amount of sesame seeds to the top of your bun.
Oh, yeah.
Nor are you using
Alright, his eyes are now in.
edges of the cheese to get that perfect melt. Some food stylists even choose to undercook the burger meat to make it look bigger and fresher, and others might soak the meat in oil to make it look like it's dripping in savory juices. And the list goes on. Legally, there is a limit to how much brands and advertisers are allowed to blur the line between real food that's been expertly styled and a crankin' meal presented as an dish. Section 5 of the Federal Trade Commission Act prohibits unfair or deceptive acts or practices. And in the case of food products, any false advertisement that is misleading in a material respect. Likewise, the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act prohibits any labeling that is false or misleading in any particular way, which basically means that food manufacturers have to list the actual ingredients used and cannot make false claims about their food that have no basis in reality. For example, you can't lie and say that your cookies have less calories or sugar than they actually do just to sell them. You have to list the accurate calorie count and amount of sugar used. And the same legally goes for fast food restaurant advertisements, menu boards, and commercials. You can't trick diners into ordering a meal based on an image of a food item that doesn't exist in real life, which is why Burger King could be in hot water if these lawsuits were true. As consumers, we're expected to understand that any product is going to look a little better in an ad than it does in real life. But that line isn't always clear. It isn't always obvious when an advertisement is lying. Most of us aren't carrying around a scale to make sure our drive-thru burger weighs exactly a quarter pound. According to the King, all their Whoppers are 4-ounce patties served on 5-inch sesame seed bun. Using the bun as a baseline, we can attempt to estimate just how much bigger the advertised burgers appear to be against the IRL burgers served. In this ad, the patty advertised has a diameter of about 6 inches. Just look at how the meat hangs out over the buns. This means that the area of the patty being advertised is roughly 28.27 square inches. Now, let's pull up some of the IRL burgers in question here. First, we have this burger, which looks to have a 4.5-inch diameter, making its estimated area about 15.9 inches. That means that the advertised burger is around 78% bigger than the real one. When it comes to volume, the difference is even more insane. Taking just the volume of the patty, the advertised patty is about 237% bigger. And
I'm okay with that.
doesn't matter.
A few of them.
The meat. Then we have this wall, which has a 4.25-inch diameter, making its estimated area about 14.1 square inches, which means the advertised burger is 99% bigger in area and 457 times bigger in volume than the IRL one. Exactly, or way more than what the lawsuit is claiming. If the 19 accusers bring forth similarly damning evidence to court, Burger King could potentially be found guilty of lying to make sales. So just how much hot French fry oil is the BK Lounge actually in? Violating the FTC Act is punishable by a civil penalty. And through the Penalty Offense Authority, the commission is allowed to seek those penalties if it can prove that the King knew his advertisements were unfair and deceptive. That civil penalty, up to $50,000 per violation. That amount adjusts every year to reflect inflation. So they're looking at a maximum fine of close to $1 million paid to the FTC. The commission's goal is to send a clear message that preying on consumers will not be profitable. As far as the civil suit goes, if Burger King is penalized by the FTC, it's likely they'd have to settle with the plaintiffs for an agreed upon amount. We won't know any exact figures unless the involved parties choose to disclose them after the trial, but an interesting possibility also lies ahead for the rest of us. In past civil lawsuit cases against unfair and deceptive practices in food advertisements, all affected customers, not just the plaintiffs who brought forth the case, were also given a small retribution payment. For example, a woman sued Jimmy John's for falsely advertising the inclusion of alfalfa sprouts on her favorite sandwich. Although Jimmy John's ultimately denied the allegations, they still agreed to settle with the plaintiff, as well as provide vouchers to all customers who dined there between February 1st, 2012 and July 21st, 2014. Those vouchers were only worth $1.40 off your next properly sprouted sandwich, but hey, it's better than nothing. In the end, if the FTC finds the King guilty, or if they decide to make a settlement, all of us Whopper enthusiasts might benefit, even if it's only a few bucks. But all those dollars and cents will eventually add up. Burger King estimates that over 1.3 billion Whoppers are sold each year worldwide, and 41 Whoppers are eaten around the world every second. Now, I'm not exactly sure how many of those billions of burgers are devoured specifically in the United States where this lawsuit is taking place, but I guess it's a pretty high number, considering the fact that the King raked in $1.3 billion in revenue in the U.S. in 2023 alone. Now, if history shows us anything, it's that the lawsuit won't go to trial for BK to
It's strange.
lose, and the entire
Sometimes
industry
it'll
to be altered forever because
burn.
You'll most
Sometimes it
likely be
won't.
settled out of court with millions, people will be paid off, and that'll be that. Even in that case, though, it sets the precedent for a lot more legal scrutiny with all these too good to be true advertisements. With puffery, or exaggeration that no reasonable customer takes literally, like the world's best or world famous, having to be decreased significantly by fast food companies across the board so they don't become the next target. So will we and the 19 civil suit plaintiffs get rich overnight thanks to underwhelming Whoppers? Probably not. But the kingdom might have a few less treasure chests when all of this is over. And we might even start seeing ads that suddenly don't look quite as appetizing as they used to. But hey, that's just a theory. A food theory. Buen provecho.
So, has anyone actually ever figured out Colonel Sanders' secret recipe blend of 11
What is
herbs
it now?
and spices? Dozens upon dozens of individuals claim to have solved the world
God, I
without
hate
mystery,
this.
but which of them, if any, should we believe? Should we believe the Colonel's own nephew, who used to mix the spices himself when he was a child? The scientist who chemically analyzed KFC's ingredients in a laboratory? Or should we believe KFC, the multinational corporation that has nothing to gain and everything to lose by the recipe becoming public knowledge, who claims to this very day, quote, no one's ever been right? Well, never fear, theorists, because today's food theory will answer it all. We're putting the most legitimate contenders to the test, as well as our own. Spoiler alert, I think we got it.
Fucking whore. Ow.
Hey guys, welcome to Food Theory, where today we're doing something very scary, actually cooking.
Hi, how are
Oh
you?
my gosh, and not just cooking any food, we are cooking perhaps one of the best kept secret foods in all of history, Colonel Sanders' secret recipe.
What do you think the secret is, Matthew?
I think the secret is love.
Oh man, and I was thinking it was just like little clippings of his beard that had fallen into the chicken batter.
So I think everyone can agree that KFC's 11 infamous herbs and spices are one of the most renowned secret recipes in food history. And we've found a lot of different recipes that say that they've cracked the code. And today we're going to put them to the test.
Yeah, so we have 5 different dupe recipes that we're going to be trying today. Some of them are crowdsourced, some of them come from food scientists,
And some of them even come from Colonel Sanders himself. Ooh, question mark.
let's get going.
Yeah, there's a lot to cover today, and a lot of chicken that needs to be fried, so let's stop throwing our bowls around and start cooking. As we throw our bowls in the ring, it's important to keep in mind that recreating KFC's original recipe is a bit like hitting a moving target. People have been trying to get the recipe right since before I was born, and during that time, the taste of KFC's chicken has changed to a certain degree. The secret 11 herbs and spices almost certainly haven't, but we know for a fact that KFC has tweaked other aspects of the recipe and preparation process, like adopting new frying oils that contain fewer trans fats. Even the late Colonel Sanders believed his recipe was altered to a noticeable degree during his own lifetime. Shortly after selling Kentucky Fried Chicken in 1964, he began voicing displeasure about perceived recipe changes being made under KFC's new ownership. As a result, some of the recipe contenders we're looking at today seek to recreate the Colonel's true original recipe before KFC corporate took over. Other recipe contenders seek to recreate the taste of KFC's original recipe the way we've come to know and love it in more recent decades. In recent years, KFC has adopted soybean oil as its frying oil of choice in many locations, especially here in the US. Since we'll be comparing the recipe contenders against contemporary KFC chicken fried in soybean oil, we're gonna fry all of our
Twisted Tea fans love summer and the smooth, refreshing taste of Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea. Made with real brewed tea and just the right kick of flavor. So don't take our word for it. Ask our fans. Twisted Tea. Good times with a twist.
If you're going to commit to a manicure, commit to a Skittles manicure.
Commit to the rainbow. Taste the rainbow.
What is the best pizza chain? It's a battle for cheesy supremacy, and I'm tagging everyone in to find the answer. It won't be easy, but luckily I have the best tasters that spending no money can buy.
That's good sauce.
Just roll it. Hello, Internet. Welcome to Food Theory, the show that is so happy it's not lactose intolerant. Because pizza's back on the menu, boys. And if you want to see what's next on the menu, make sure to click the subscribe button. Last week, I did a deep dive into how many pizzas you should buy for any amount of guests. I sweat over the numbers as I crunched and calculated to determine whether large is truly the best size. I exposed Papa John and its lies. And what did that get me when I showed Lee my results so he could finally accept me as a consummate professional like him? Nope, Papa John's better. All of that hard work for nothing. But I wasn't about to crumble, so since Lee both broke
Oh,
my heart,
I am
decided to make
finishing
this
up a few projects. I got a convention next weekend, so I do not have enough products, so I'm kind of in a panic right now, actually. If you could hear inside my head, it would just be one long So,
Papa John's can snatch victory.
trying to
in the
finish this
redemption
giant
story of the
jackalope.
century. Robert Downey Jr. cleaning up his act to become the most beloved superhero ever.
I love these horns, but they might be
Justin Bieber
almost too
low-key
big.
doing a 180 to a pretty cool guy. Nothing compared to this. In case you're wondering why Papa John's is such a dark horse in this little competition, in the last episode we took a deep dive into the age-old question of how many and what size pizzas you should get for a party.
There's no
Definitely go
orange
give it
on
a
here,
look.
so it doesn't really
The
bring it in.
TLDR, large pizzas are generally where it's at, but Domino's gives you the best bang for your buck, and by a lot too. And in the absolute last place, Papa John's. It wasn't particularly close either, but that was from an objective standpoint. As we all know though, pizza isn't just about the price or the slice size, it's about whether it's nice, guys. Hashtag.
Kind of like
So today
the
we're putting our
colors.
pizza where our
Go
mouths
with it.
are and
We'll put
determining
your eyes
once
on,
and
though.
for all which pizza chain is the supreme and which just isn't worth the dough. Now, unlike the holidays, it was pretty easy to get people to respond to my email this time around. Go figure. So today's lineup is me,
What I do with
Ash,
the
Dan,
super glue?
Amy, and Lee. But
Where I put
because
it?
Lee didn't want to be alone on the couch, he brought Tom. It's fine. Whatever. He's a professional.
Yes.
It'll be okay. I'm not mad about it.
Yeah, because it feels like they're compensating for something.
Yeah, you know so little something about that, right? It's not a big deal.
I'm mad about it, and just when I thought Lee and I were friends. Speaking of friends, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor and friends over at the Shapeshifting YouTube channel. You know, here at Theorist, we value research, science, and asking the important questions about the world around us, like how certain advancements affect how we live, or how somehow thousands of years of human evolution and civilization still led to Tom. Shapeshifting is a new YouTube channel that takes a deep dive look into something that is changing the
They're so
healthcare
soft,
industry.
but they don't hold very
GLP-1.
well
You may
in
have
the
heard of it as the popular Ozempic. It's a complex and nuanced trend, with questions being thrown out left and right. Shapeshifting uses healthcare experts to present the most scientifically accurate discourse around this revolutionary medication. No matter what your opinions on it are, or even if you don't have any opinions on it yet, I definitely recommend checking out their channel to learn more. They cover a range of topics all surrounding GLP-1s. Their newest video is especially fun for me because it covers exercise and how it relates to GLP-1s. It busts some important myths and looks at how exercise can complement the medication. If you're a fan of scientific breakdowns and discussions, you'll have a great time watching, even if they don't know the answer to the Tom question. Thanks again to Shapeshifting for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to my ragtag group of volunteers. So how is this gonna go down? We have a lineup of 4 of the most popular chains in the US. Domino's, Pizza Hut, Little Caesars, and Papa John's. As a little monkey wrench to test just how refined our palates are, we've also thrown in a DiGiorno pizza. This is to see if any of us might be fooled, in which case instant disqualification, but also for a little sum come down the pipeline later on. It's gonna be super fun. Seriously, it plays the upscribe say Uttenday. The blind taste test will judge the pizza on 3 components: the cheese, the sauce, and the dough/crust. For each category, each person will give it a score from 1 to 5, and at the end of each round, we'll add
Those
up
are
all the
roughly
scores
the
to see
same.
which place ends up with the highest cumulative score. Oh, and before we dive in, I just want to mention one to you. We won't actually show which pizza is which until the very end. So if you have time and a bunch of friends, order up some pizzas and play along if you want. If you do, make sure to drop your scores in the comments below, or just let me know which place is your favorite overall. Now, let's get to it. Alright, to kick things off, we have a pinch of regret for the blind part of this test.
Okay, got it.
This is the problem.
Okay, sorry, yes.
Is this one piece?
I think it's your 2 pieces.
Oh, like wishboning. Are you grabbing the other piece?
Yes, I'm holding a piece in the air. It is elevated.
But we got the hang of things pretty quickly.
I love lukewarm pizza. This is like the mediocrest sliced pizza I've ever had in my life.
Tom and Lee were not amused, but Ash and I dove in just a bit more in our analysis.
The sauce is a little understated. I'm getting a lot of cheese in this bite. It's wide, but it's flat. The kind of rising sensation isn't really happening. However, we have a
Jesus, that's an analysis.
crispy garlicky crust that's happening up here, which I do very much enjoy. I think that the crust here is really the star of the show. I would honestly just be happy eating the crust. I love me some good bread.
Amy and Dan, on the other hand,
This is just a bubble.
Did you get just a bubble?
Just a flaky bubble.
these people, they really like to test my patience, taking their breath and powering through to the rankings, but not before a cheap shot on my part. Did you have a plate?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I was trying not to leave any crumbs, and so I was eating very meticulously over it.
Oh, I'm leaving crumbs everywhere. I mean, in my defense, this is the only way I can get on the GT live side nowadays. You can ban me from the chat, Ash, but I will have my revenge!
I would give cheese like a 2 out of 5.
Yeah, I think 2's fat.
I give the sauce a. Can we give it a 0?
I do love these colors.
Okay, yeah, I give it a 1.
I can't help it, I do love them.
would say the crust.
I like bright colors.
I actually thought was pretty good. I'd say the crust is a 3, bordering on like 4.
Yeah, I think, again, I was going to say 3. I think 3 is
I don't want to go to the store again
It's not
today, but I have a
embarrassed,
feeling
it's
I might have
not tough
to.
or difficult, and it's got some kind of flavour to it, but it's nothing special.
Not a strong showing for pizza number 1. Let's see what the bubble folks have to say.
Crust, 2. Sauce, 3. Cheese, 3. So,
Crust 2, sauce 3, cheese 3. Like right, it's
Hey!
just so middle. Yeah, very good. We're
Yay! Okay, not to ruin the whole immersion of this video, but in writing the script, I had to listen to this moment of these two screaming yay so much that I'm pretty sure I ruptured an eardrum. Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Dan.
So, I would say the cheese, I'd give it a 3. Middle of the road, nothing crazy, nothing too much. It's just a solid cheese. Sauce, I give it a 2. She's quiet, she's moving in silence, a little bit sweet, but I could use more. I'm very saucy as a human being. Crust, I'm giving a 4.
Right, that's an
The
analysis.
flavor that's coming in there. The butter is also nice and crispy. There's a great combination of ingredients there. I'm just saying it as a 4 because I'm not absolutely blown away yet, and I'm prepared to get blown away.
Wow, Ash really missed their calling as a food critic. I was on the same page for the most part, ish. I'll agree with you on the cheese and the dough. There's a 3 and a 4. I think the dough is really well seasoned, and there's not too much of it. It wasn't like too cakey to get through that
Right,
pizza.
exactly.
But the sauce, I cannot forgive a 2. This is a 4 sauce. It is so good.
Disagree.
And she coats your tongue so deliciously. And
She's barely there.
she is not there. She is there for you. She is supportive.
Then I can't feel her.
Oh, well, you're just high maintenance. All right. That is a 4 for me for sauce. Let's move on. A little disagreement, but that's fine because I'm the host and I have final say. And I say she was so there.
No, she wasn't.
What? You can't just appear in my VO.
I can, when you're saying something so egregiously false.
Okay, fine. Agree to disagree.
Wait, Ash gets to defend their take in the VO? What I meant by bubbly was that.
Nope.
Oh, hey, did we get lines?
Absolutely not. We are not doing this. Shoot, get. Woo. So, to finish off the first round, that leaves Pizza 1 with a total score of 16 for the crust, 14 for the sauce, and 18 for cheese for a grand total of 48. Not too shabby, but we still get lots of pizzas.
I did
Pizza
not
number 2
use an
was
entire pack of
out the gate.
skewers. I didn't. I couldn't have.
This is not gonna end well.
Have you seen the movie Flubber?
Yes.
This feels like what Flubber would feel like.
This is Flubber pizza. The undercarriage
I couldn't.
here is
There's
smooth
no
like
way.
a baby's bottom. I don't know how I feel about that.
This feels like pizza that's been out on a plate at a buffet for like
There,
4 hours.
no.
Ooh, it's less,
It has to be
this one
somewhere.
feels less well done than the last
I
one. The
just
last
don't
one
see it
was
because I'm an
crisp.
idiot and I don't put anything
That's
away where
good
it's supposed to
sauce.
go.
Oh,
Oh wow, no.
yes.
Skip
I have to.
Brody style and start growing your own veggies at home with Miracle Grow Organics. 100% organic ingredients for 100% organic harvest. Miracle
No,
Grow
no.
Organics.
I'm not leaving this fucking house again today. I don't know where anything is. There's a whole package. I did not use a whole package. I put it somewhere. So I wouldn't lose it. I just don't know where that place is.
Girl, it's my couch.
While Ash and I disagreed hard, Tom and Lee were on the same page.
So cheese, it's like you got 1. There's barely any on here.
There probably is, but it doesn't taste like it. That's the
Amy and Dan agreed on high scores, just not in the same categories.
I'll give the cheese a 4 and the sauce a 3.
No. Cheese 3, sauce 4.
No.
Incorrect.
I'm gonna give the cheese. The cheese is actually coming through. I quite like it. I'm gonna give the cheese.
Oh, I'm gold.
It's in front of me. I just need to
Some
find it.
say you can still hear the gulp in the halls of the GT Live set to this day. For pizza number 2, we finished with a total of 12 for crust, 18 for sauce, and 14 for cheese, for a total of 44 points. Putting this 4 points behind pizza number 1. Pizza
There is
3
no
was a
way.
shocker
No.
for some of us. For Dan, it
No,
left
no,
him
no, no.
speechless. Your guess is as good as mine. Either Dan hated it or he loved it so much it literally forced him into a state of meditation. The rest of us were much more booked.
Immediate difference on this one.
The sauce is great.
Yeah, the sauce is fantastic.
It's really basil forward. Sorry,
Yeah.
basil. Sorry, I can see Santi judging me for calling it basil. I can feel it.
Ah, he knows me so well.
I'm gonna love this. I know him. That's familiar.
Oh,
I know
wow.
her.
I thought I did. It's like the high school
Just have to use the little ones, I guess.
later. You're like, what happened to you?
If Ash and my ramblings have you a little lost, we loved this pizza.
I think this has been my favorite so far.
I agree. This is the best one, and it's not close.
The other 4 uncultured barbarians disagree. Granted, Tom and Lee both loved the sauce like we did, but the other parts, not so much.
The cheese, yeah,
And the other one.
it's still not strong. It's at least there, so 2 I think is fair. Dough,
I'd give it a 2. It's better than that, the one that we didn't like.
yeah, I'd say 2. I think that's fair.
Sauce is a 2. It's too sweet.
Ow.
And the cheese is a 2. I don't like it.
I don't like cheese either.
Seriously, I don't know what they're talking about. Guess Ash and I are just better. Joe, 5. Sauce, 5. Nona, crushed it. Yeah, the one that they have trapped in the basement. They have like a giant shackle on her and she's not allowed to leave.
Nona.
Poor Nona. Poor Nona. But her sauce was just so delicious. Despite some disagreement, even for the naysayers, the sauce was the highlight of this pizza and ended up giving it the highest score in that category by far.
How did I do with it?
With 22 points.
I wouldn't
The dough
know.
Also had a
Everything's
strong
just a freaking
showing
mess.
with
Can't find
19 and made up for the cheese's 15
Whatever.
points for a gut-busting total of 56 points, putting it comfortably in the lead coming into the final 2 pizzas. The penultimate pizza was far from the ultimate, and it got some immediate reaction.
I know what this is. I know exactly what this is.
Ah, I know this one.
This is the DiGiorno.
The cheese comes off in a solid piece.
This is the worst one by far so far.
I know what this is.
Oh my god, that's mild.
Right?
Only don't play that.
I'm good.
It was pretty obvious from minute 1. Ash and I were totally in sync here.
Can we say it?
On the count of 3.
One,
1,
two,
2, 3, go.
DiGiorno.
DiGiorno.
Go? You said the count of 3.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, go, DiGiorno.
You didn't say the count of 3, go.
It's
The
implicit
count
in
of
the count of
3.
3.
I know it from where.
Okay, kind of in sync. 3 fifths in sync. Lance, Chris, and Joe. No JC or Justin. Regardless, none of us were fooled here. Good to know for no reason whatsoever. But yeah, spoilers. This was the DiGiorno pizza. It was painfully obvious. Almost as painful as its score. Ending the round with the lowest score in each category for a measly 30.5 points. Final round! And after the DiGiornos, it was only uphill from here.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I don't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't this.
She's fruity.
Ash and I were astounded by the level of sweetness in the sauce, but we couldn't quite put our finger on where it could be from. The others, though?
It's just Papa John's.
Papa John's.
Papa John.
Papa John's 100%.
Yeah, I couldn't make it out. Did they say Papa John's? Did they seem sure about that? Well, Lee did, and he knew exactly why.
The reasons I can tell, the sauce is a little bit sweeter. Feel of the bread is also very specific to Papa John's.
I would say the
Yeah.
cheese is really good.
Yes,
actually.
I agree.
It's got that right level of melty cheese while also feeling like it's got some like texture to it, like that brand that I was talking
Yeah.
about. So that's really nice. But it doesn't feel like it's gonna come off in a slab.
The best chain. The best one.
Okay, settle down, Lee. Amy and Dan might have something to say about that.
Papa John's is a bad father. That's how I feel.
And you are entitled to your feelings, Amy. Unfortunately for you, no one else agreed. Across the board, this pizza had something we all love, and that Lee really loved. The sauce was the most most divisive, with Amy and Dan giving it one of the lowest scores in the day. And while it was a bit too sweet for me, it was still, in the immortal words of Dan, good sauce. Papa John's, pizza number 5, ended up getting high scores across the board, with 20 for crust, 20 for sauce, and 19 for cheese, ending up with a grand total of 59. But now it's time to see if our predictions were right, if Pizza 5 truly is Papa John's, and see if their pizza can finally redeem their name.
1, 2, 3, go.
Domino's.
Domino's.
Yeah. You are both correct.
Ooh, oh, you're watching.
That is correct.
YouTube must be boring tonight.
Oh, damn.
Wait, does that mean I'm right?
You're right. Santi, you are incorrect.
What?
Ash is correct.
Yes!
You're both correct.
Which means that Dan is right and I'm wrong. And you know what? That's okay. I still gotta eat a heck ton of pizza. I waited.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine. You're not really fine.
Ash is correct.
What? Little Caesars has the best sauce? That is nuts!
DiGiorno.
You are both correct.
Yeah.
Not even close.
It was not delivery.
Pop John's. It was clearly Pop John's.
Ash by 5.
What? And that is how you do it.
I am astounded right now. Excuse me while I pick my jaw up off the floor long enough to say congratulations to Papa John's. A true Cinderella story, finally redeeming itself. While their prices are high and they're full of lies, their pizza's flavor speaks nothing but truth. It came away with the win with 59 total points. And the best
being sticky.
overall
You're not supposed to be
score in
sticky at all.
category. But the number 2
Why are you
spot
sticky?
and the true dark horse
The
of this
humidity in here?
competition goes to Little Caesars, which earned the highest number of any individual category with its sauce, totaling a whopping 22 points
go.
for Nona's delicious creation. At number 3 is the winner from last week's episode, Domino's, and rounding off 4th and 5th place are Pizza Hut and DiGiorno's, which got the lowest score by far with 30.5. What this means for you is that if you're willing to spend a little extra and potentially get less pizza, Papa John's pizza is sure to please. But if you're looking for a less sweet, more robust and complex sauce, look no further than Little C's. And definitely steer clear of DiGiorno's. As for our predictions, Ash, Tom, and Dan all made out with clean sweeps. Lee got 4 correct. Amy got 2 correct. And me, well, I got 2 correct. And an entire worldview shattered. I don't know who I am anymore, but I definitely know who Little Caesars is now. Because while Papa John's may have won the crown, Little Caesars and Nona won my heart. But hey, that's just a theory. A food theory. Buen provecho. I may not have had my best showing here, but if you want to see me beat Uncle Roger, make sure to click the link on the screen now. And as always, I'll see you next week.
Twisted Tea fans love summer.
Yeah, I like Twisted Tea, and Twisted Tea took care of racists.
Made with real brewed tea and just a right kick of lemon flavor. But don't take our word for it. Ask our fans. Twisted Tea. Good times with a twist.
Ah, Lunchables. There was a time when whipping out one of these bad boys made you the coolest kid at the lunch table. But lately, for no reason in particular, people have started to question whether all these lunch kits are really good for kids to eat. And not just because of questionable strawberry banana drink choices. More and more of these kits are popping up for kids and claim that they're better alternatives. But while everyone has been arguing about whether X or Y meal kit is healthier, everyone has missed what's really going on here. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Food Theory, the show with a surprising twist that's hard to resist. And today we're
Alright.
talking about all
Each
things
set,
lunch.
one giant
The
jackalope.
undisputed world of lunchtime needs no introduction. It's been churning out deli meats and pizza circles since the late 80s. My personal favorite, the pancake Lunchables. Little discs of pancakes with syrup and bacon bits. Even though every time I bring them up, no one
that
seems to remember.
wired?
Leave a comment down below if you
I hate
But fun fact, Lunchables was originally created as a way for its parent company, Oscar Mayer, to sell more bologna and other deli meats. But it also had the benefit of being a super convenient lunch for busy parents to pack. Create a delicious product and throw in some rad commercials, and it's no wonder that Lunchables eventually grew to become the sought-after lunchtime treat it is today. But not everyone is all aboard the Lunchables train. In recent months, people have started to question
Oh,
whether
God.
Lunchables and all these pre-made meal kits that have popped popped up are all that good for kids on a daily basis. Regardless, they're still so
Oh, it was so
popular
nice.
that Mr. Beast, KSI, and Logan Paul have released their own meal lunch kit, Lunchly, to just a wee bit of controversy. But today, we're not going to wade into that Lunchables versus Lunchly debate. A lot of people that are well qualified and dang near as handsome as I am have already done a great job comparing and contrasting the two. Instead, I'm going to take a big step back, because whether it's Lunchables, Lunchly, or any other pre-made meal kit, people online have brought up some legitimate concerns about the long-term health value these kinds of products have for children. But is this the internet being over-paranoid, or is there something in these meals that should have us running for the hills? Get your sauce squeezers and cracker stackers ready, loyal theorists, as we find out whether Lunchables are more Funchables or lunch awful for your health. A good place to start looking when trying to figure out if a piece of food is good for you or not is obviously the nutrition facts label. And the first place that most of us tend to gravitate toward on that label is the calorie count. I mean, they literally put the thing in like 200-point font, so yeah, of course we're gonna look there first. And taking a look at a pack of Lunchables, turkey, and cheddar cracker stackers, you'll see that they contain 260 calories per package. Similarly, Lunchly's turkey stackums are just 230 calories per package, and that includes a mini bottle of Prime and a Feastables bar. Meanwhile, a third brand of these cracker kits, Armor Brand's Lunch Makers Cracker Crunchers, man, these names are too long, are just 210
I already listened to this one.
including the mini Butterfinger. And the low caloric nature isn't
Where
limited to
is
just
the good
crackers.
scissors?
The iconic pizza varieties of these products are 220 and 360
Where are the good
calories
scissors?
per full package. So
Try
right
the
off
bad
bat,
scissors.
It's clear that Lunchables and all these other
Nope.
meal kits are super low in calories. Too low, in fact. Look, it's no secret that
They're there.
obesity rates globally, but especially in the United States, are climbing. And calories are certainly a big contributor to that problem. But, and this may surprise you, these meals actually swing too far in the other direction, being too few in calories to really be considered a full meal. Remember, kids aren't just tiny adults. Their bodies are growing and need these calories and nutrients to not just maintain themselves, but to grow as well. According to the American Heart Association, school-aged children should be eating between 1,200 and 2,200 calories per day, depending on their age and sex. According to the National School Lunch Program, or the NSLP, to be considered a meal, a school lunch is supposed to be between 550 and 850 calories. The only Lunchables that even come close to that caloric threshold are the uploaded sub-meal, the nachos, and the new grilled cheese, which is the only one that actually meets the bare minimum threshold for a kid in K-5. But the point remains the same. For a kid in, say, the 6th grade to meet the minimum caloric requirement for a lunch, they'd have to eat around 2.3 times the amount of cracker stackers, which, while that sounds delicious, also comes with 2.3 times the other macros. Speaking of which, calories aren't the only thing that
that's
determines
something orange.
health.
Do I have anything orange?
Count on the Lunchable may be low, that's not true what's in there. Starting with the good, turkey and cheddar comes with an impressive 13 grams of protein in that calorically small. For context, a child
Doesn't
between the ages of 9 and
close enough for me.
13 should be eating around 34 grams of protein per day, while teenagers in the awkward thrusts of puberty should be eating around 46 to 52 grams. That means that a Lunchables cracker stacker, despite its pitiful calorie count, does provide about a quarter of the protein an average growing teenager needs in a given day. And in case you're wondering, Lunchly's equivalent comes in at a lower 11 grams of protein. But what they lack in protein, they make up for in more things. Why? What you think I was gonna say? But turning back to packaging and other macronutrients, let's look at the fats found in a Lunchable. Despite fat's bad reputation, our bodies do need some fat in order to carry out our daily functions. Fat is used as an energy source, just like sugar. And we also need fats in our diets to absorb some of our fat-soluble vitamins, like vitamins K, A, and E. But
Nothing wrong with that.
obviously,
I'll
too
have a
much
bunch of
fat
them.
in your diet can increase the risk of a
Fluff,
whole
fluff.
smorgasbord of problems, including obesity, coronary heart disease, and even some cancers. And taking another look at both Lunchables and Lunchly, fat is very much on the menu. The nachos, crackers, and pizza for both brands contain between 12 and 21 grams of fat, with between a third to a whole half of that being saturated fat. You may remember from our macadamia nuts episode that I briefly took residence in Matt's pantry, but you may also remember that we spoke quite a bit about all the different types of fats. TLDW, saturated fats, and trans fat fats are considered the bad type that you should avoid. The saturated and saturated fats comes from them containing more hydrogens than an unsaturated fat. In other words, they are saturated with them. But the reason that saturated fats are so problematic is because they increase the LDL or bad cholesterol in your blood and therefore increase your risk of heart disease. And looking at the nutrition facts for so many of these meal kits, while having 7 grams of saturated fat doesn't sound a lot, that's a full third of what the average adult should be having in a given day. Kids even less. Again, looking at the NSLP standard, lunches for children are not allowed to have more than 10% of the total calories come from saturated fat. So it would seem that kits like Lunchables and Lunchly are saturated with hydrogen, saturated with fat, and saturated with an increased risk of developing heart disease. And speaking of heart disease, the nutrient we find in these meal kits that's the biggest red flag when it comes to the heart health is, of course, sodium. And don't get me wrong, I love salt. We all love salt. It can both preserve our food and make it taste even better. Want my potentially lukewarm take? It is the second most important culinary discovery in history, only behind fire. But all of that delicious salt comes with a catch. Eating too much sodium has been linked to increased blood pressure and an elevated risk of stroke and heart disease. And you may be thinking, heart disease, schmart disease, what's the big deal about that? Well, what if I told you that according to the CDC, heart disease is the #1 leading cause of death in Americans each year? More than cancer, more than strokes, more than listening to Baby Shark for 10 hours in a row on YouTube. A full 700,000 Americans die of heart disease every year, and our appetite for salt and fat unfortunately plays a big role in that. So with all of that doom and gloom, how do our meal kits do? Not great. The Lunchables turkey and cheddar cracker stackers contains a gargantuan 690 milligrams of sodium. Although strangely enough, if you buy the version with Capri Sun and a Reese's peanut butter cup, it's less at 560 milligrams for some reason. I honestly have no idea why. It seems like it's the same thing, but with a drink and dessert added. We'll go with magic for now. But either way, that's still super high, especially for children. 690 milligrams is over half of what's adequate for a child in a day. And while it seems like a no-brainer for companies like Oscar Mayer to remove as much of that excess sodium as possible, it's not that simple. Not only does that sodium make it taste better, something the food company obviously cares about, but that salt also helps the meat and cheese last longer in transport and on store shelves. Now, you might have seen that there's been pictures and videos circulating online that a certain other meal kit brand that will remain nameless had issues with moldy cheese on their pizza. At first, I thought this might be as a result of having less sodium than Lunchables and thus leading to them not lasting quite as long. But comparing the two big brands, that other brand has higher levels of sodium than the normal pizza. Of course, at the time of writing this, we don't know what caused this moldy cheese epidemic, or even if it's a really widespread issue. But we can say that a lack of sodium in the cheese is definitely not the reason. So yeah, regardless of which meal kit you pick up, you're also going to be picking up a big spoonful.
Is your garden trying to tell you something? Sunlight and water can't satisfy your garden's hunger, so feed them Miracle Grow and see the difference. Satisfy your garden's hunger with Miracle Grow.
XL Refreshers. Do what feels fresh.
Spoonful of salt to go with it. And since that salt leads to an increased risk of cardiovascular disease, it might not be a great idea to send kids to school with one of these every day. But that doesn't matter, because what if I told you that children are able to buy Lunchables at schools now? Last year, Oscar Mayer and its parent company Kraft Heinz announced that they were rolling out a modified version of their classic cracker stacker and pizza Lunchables as part of the NSLP. Now, if you've watched this episode so far and are thinking there's no way that Lunchables can meet those nutritional guidelines, you'd be right. But that didn't stop Lunchables. Lunchables ended up creating slightly modified versions of their classic cracker stacker and pizza that allowed it to slide just under those NSLP standards. They upped the protein a bit and used whole grain in the crackers in order to be served alongside pizza squares as part of a balanced school lunch. As a result of this modification, both the pizza and crackers count as meat or meat equivalent, a whole grain, and the sauce in the pizza seems to count as a red/orange vegetable. Go figure. And if you think that it's kind of bogus that Lunchables can count as a vegetable, we have a whole video where we talk about the craziness of NSLP
Little
standards.
jackalope.
You might be
Needs
thinking,
to be dusted off.
Lunchables sneak into school lunch menus might be lame, but at least it's healthier than the store-bought version. Well, I wouldn't be so sure. One analysis found that while the school version did have more protein protein, less saturated fat, and even more fiber, it also had nearly 200 more milligrams of sodium than the store-bought version, where the levels were already concerningly high. Let's move on. I don't think my heart can take much more of this. Jeez! So far, we've talked about how Lunchables and meal kits like it are too low in calories as well as too high in sodium and fat. What's next? You're gonna tell me that these kits also contain dangerously high levels of... Oh, come on! Yep, according to Consumer Reports, they found that Lunchables and other kits like it contain concerningly high levels of lead, the super dangerous neurotoxin, the same lead that is especially dangerous for children. In fact, lead in children is linked to damage to the brain and nervous system, slow growth and development, as well as learning and behavior problems. Countless studies over the years have shown a strong correlation between lead exposure as a kid and the incidence of violent crimes as an adult. So, how did Lunchables and the other kids do in their lead test? Well, considering I'm talking about it now, I think you know, not good. Also, I'd note that Lunchly wasn't included in the study because the product didn't actually exist at the time. But the test found that Cracker Stackers had 74% of the maximum allowable dose level of lead as defined by the state of California. Now, if you know anything about California, you know that they tend to be pretty strict when it comes to regulations. So being below that standard isn't too bad. But do you know what Santi's maximum allowable dose of lead is in my food? 0! Yeah, 74% is less than 100%, but I don't want 3/4 of my daily lead coming from 250 calories worth of cheese and crackers. By the way, the pizza varieties didn't fare much better, having lead levels of 73% and 69%. Nice, but not nice. And so you might be asking yourself, how is it possible for all of this excess salt, fat, and even lead to get in our food supply? Well, it all comes down to how it's processed.
Getting plugged in. This little guy in the wall is just like fell off.
Probably know that Lunchables don't
Happens.
grow on trees. Heck, they'd probably be healthier if they did. Instead, it's what we call in the biz an ultra-processed food, or UPF. Essentially, all of our food can broadly be put into 3 categories: unprocessed, processed, and ultra-processed foods. For unprocessed foods, think of something like an apple, which is more or less the product in as natural of a state as possible with little to nothing being done to it. Processed foods involve, well, processing the food in some way. This can include grinding, peeling, squeezing, or juicing to transform that product into something else. So, if an apple is
the
unprocessed,
dehumidifier
something like
here
organic apple
somewhere?
juice be considered processed. Then finally, we have ultra-processed foods, which encompasses the vast majority of our packaged goods you find in the supermarket. UPFs have been heavily processed, ingredients have been added, and the original ingredients are completely unrecognizable from their quote-unquote natural state. To round out our apple analogy, an apple pie would be considered an ultra-processed food. And UPFs aren't just highly processed, they can also be highly hazardous to our health. One meta-analysis of 25 different studies of UPFs totaling around 10 million participants found a link between eating UPFs and 32 different conditions, including type 2 diabetes, sleeping disorders, and anxiety. Wait a minute, you're telling me that eating pancake Lunchables as a kid is why I'm so anxious all the time? All joking aside, in general, UPFs, while delicious, come with, on average, higher levels of fat, sugar, sodium, and other chemicals. And sometimes these processes can also cause some unintended ingredients like lead and plastics to sneak in there as well. That's not to say that the ultra-processed foods always mean unhealthy, but 9 times out of 10, if it's ultra-processed, like our meal kits we've been talking about today, it's gonna contain higher levels of all that stuff that slowly takes a toll on our health, especially for kids. Man, we've really let kids down, haven't we? And I'm not just talking about how Lunchables, Lunchly, and kits like it are ultra-processed, filled with sodium and fat, too many calories, and too much lead, because that's true of just about all the food we give kids these days. Although Lunchly might be at the tippity top of foods not to give them. But I'm not here to be an enemy of processed food. This food is delicious, but I'm also an adult. I have all the knowledge to make the best or worst choices about what to put in my body. But kids are impressionable in more ways than just repeating swear words. Not only do healthy meals give their bodies the nutrients they need to grow up big and strong, but it also teaches them healthier habits and develops a palate not geared towards just salt and fat. So can't we just bring more healthy food into our kids' cafeterias and lunchboxes? It's it's not always so simple. I mean, let's take a look at just in-school lunches. School cafeterias have so many competing forces that it makes it so hard to make lunchtime even possible, let alone healthy. Schools have to feed hundreds or even thousands of kids lunch and oftentimes breakfast every single day. So time is at a premium. Also, here in the US, the amount of money the federal government gives to schools to help feed kids is comically small. After accounting for labor and equipment costs, the average school has just $1.25 per meal to feed kids. Yeah, trying to make a quick and healthy meal for thousands of kids on that sort of budget. It's damn near impossible. And of course, the toughest critics of all are kids. You can lay out all the healthy food you want, but if kids don't eat it, it's wasted food and money. All of this also applies to our kids who are bringing Lunchables or things like that to school. Time, cost, and personal preference can lead to lunches that are tasty but lack what kids really need. And federal regulators too have to balance all of these competing interests and priorities while continuing to enforce healthier standards on child lunches, while also hearing the legitimate concerns from kids, schools, and food manufacturers. So is that it? Are kids just doomed to be stuck with subpar food that sets themselves up with bad food habits? Not necessarily, because despite all the struggles, those standards continue to improve. The USDA's National School Lunch Program, the same program that allows Lunchables pizza to be a vegetable, continues to update its standards to try and be healthier and healthier. Recently, they updated the guidelines for how much sodium can be in school lunches by around 10%. It's not as much as the USDA originally wanted to slash it by, but progress is progress. The NSLP is also phasing in limits on added sugars, limits on sugary cereals and yogurts, as well as standards for what nutrients milk substitute need to have to be considered healthy. All things that consider a step in the right direction. And there's a way for you to make a difference. Because you know whose standards are as high as ever? Ours. The general public knows way more about nutrition than we ever have before, and there are a lot of things in place, like the nutrition facts label, that give us the tools to make smarter decisions about not just our food, but our kids as well. We talked about this bit when we did the Deadly Burger episode, but just looking at the nutrition facts label percent of your daily value can tell you a lot about whether a particular item is nutritious or not. Less than 5% of something's daily value is considered low, and over 20% is considered high. That right there can already be a quick and easy way to know, oh, this lunchly might be too high in sodium or fat or mold for what I or my very hypothetical child need.
Mold.
And if you're looking for quick and healthy alternatives to these kind of meal kits, they do exist, just at a cost. Not a sponsor, but one company called Little Spoon offers what they call Lunchers. Essentially the same idea as Lunchables delivered straight to your door, but without a lot of the baggage we talked about today. While still low in calories, their pizza contains around a third less saturated fat and about half as much sodium. And as much as I love a Lunchable pizza, this dish is way more appetizing. Of course, all that goodness comes at a cost to your wallet. A big one. Little Spoon Luncher starts at around $7.29 per meal. Compare that to Lunchables at a much more affordable $1.87. But you don't need to give an arm and a leg to create healthy meals. If time is no issue, creating your own meal kits at home, perfectly dialed to what you or your kid need, can be not only a fun way to keep up that nutritional game, but it can also teach fun meal prepping and health habits to your children that will stick with them longer than a cracked deck. And speaking of which, what's the final ruling here on the healthiness of our favorite lunch treat? Are Lunchables, Lunchly, and other meal kits a disgusting product that should be removed from store shelves and never eaten again by mortals? Some of them. Would I recommend people, or especially children, eat Lunchables or Lunchly every day? God, no. But that's okay. Sometimes time or taste supersedes making the most optimal choice. Instead, it's about being as informed as possible so that you can make small changes that ultimately make you lunch able to improve yours or your kid's health. But hey, that's just a theory. A food theory. Bon appetit. And did you know that chicken noodle is not the thing you need when you're sick from school? Slurp that video on screen to watch me dissect why mom's miracle cure was one big lie. And as always, I'll see you next week.
So we are the first ever sensory-friendly restaurant in Canada. So we hire neurodivergent talents, and we also create an inclusive space for everyone to dine in.
Feels like a dream, feels like magic. Now I believe I can have it. All of my wishes came true. Shaped like a billionaire. Shaped like a billionaire. Tell me
Do you turn to coffee and soda as a little treat to help you get through the day, even though you feel guilty because you promised to cut down on caffeine this year? Yeah, me too. Nowadays, it feels like caffeine is the new drug epidemic, shoved into every corner of our lives in increasing amounts. Coffees, energy drinks, heck, even lemonade are so full of this stuff that they're becoming outright deadly. But caffeine is hidden in more than just your food and drink. More and more recently, skincare products have been infused with caffeine to help brighten up the skin and supposedly give you energy. But that can't really work, right? I can't just up and replace my daily Diet Coke with a scrub down of a special face lotion, can I? In a world where we need to be increasingly aware of our caffeine intake, is it possible that we're getting high on caffeine through our very own skin? Help!
Why are there so many live-action remakes? Lilo and Stitch, How to Train Your Dragon, Snow White, Mufasa, The Little Mermaid. Why are the studios making these when it seems like no one even wants them? Well, the truth is, they've kind of been making them all along, and we just didn't realize it. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Film Theory, the show that's going to be remaking all of our popular old theories starring The Rock, Jack Black, and Tom Holland. So subscribe if you want to see that. No, not really, but can you imagine if we did that? So I'm sure a lot of you have noticed it seems like an uptick in live-action adaptations of animated classics, especially in the last 10 years or so, right? It seems like every single quarter, Disney is having out one of these things. Some pretty good, and some not. They're also getting crazy with how quickly they're making these. Did you know that they're making a live-action Moana movie to release next year, just 10 years after the original? Now, you and I might look at that and let out a really long sigh just thinking about it, but these movies probably aren't going away. Yes, if you just look at this year's Snow White, how it failed, and Disney reconsidering some projects for Elizabeth, you might think that they're going to slow down. But then Lilo and Stitch came out and destroyed the box office during Memorial Day, followed by DreamWorks and Universal also getting into the mix by remaking one of their animated films, How to Train Your Dragon, and it also being a franchise best performer. These movies are absolutely going to keep coming, and I want to figure out why. Why are there so many gosh darn live-action remakes? Now, there might be a lot of reasons to contribute to that. Like, for example, there's oftentimes a stigma that cartoons are for kids, and more people are willing to watch a live-action project than an animated one. It's stupid, but it is true. And the most obvious answer here is that these studios keep making these movies because, well, people will go see them. They make money. And in a lot of ways, these live-action remakes are taking on the same role that direct-to-DVD sequels or cartoon spin-offs did in the past. Think stuff like Aladdin 2 or Hercules the Animated Series, ways to eke out just a bit more money from an IP. Yeah, corporate greed is yet again a driving force behind a lot of these decisions. But I want to take it a step further. Why do these make money? Why do people keep going to see them? Well, loyal theorists, this is a very broad topic with a lot of answers, but I think I figured it out. I think I've narrowed the reasoning down for these studios, and if we know those reasons, I think we can make some real change here. No, these remakes are probably not going away anytime soon, but at the very least, we can guide these studios towards making ones that might actually be kind of cool. So grab your popcorn, friends. Let's dig in. So to really break down the reasoning here, I think we need some background about how this entire trend actually started, because funnily enough,
Nova Scotia's home support workers are in crisis. Low wages, unsafe conditions, hundreds left waiting for care. These workers are essential. Home care is healthcare. We can't fix our healthcare system paying these workers near minimum wage. Minister Barb Adams, you're reasonable. You understand this. You have the power to fix it. It's time to act. Tell Minister Adams. Support fair wages, guaranteed hours, and safe working conditions for home support workers.
The hottest sale of the summer is back with deals that are off the charts. Shop Black Friday in July and save up to 40% and save the tax store-wide. Plus, get no interest and no payments for 12 months. Only at Ashley Furniture, Atrium Dartmouth, and Mapleton Center, Moncton.
Disney kind of stumbled into the success of these films. Sure, there had always been a couple of mildly successful remakes of their animated classics in like the 90s. I think 101 Dalmatians, for example. But the first one of these to really hit it big was 2010's Alice in Wonderland. But if you go back and watch that one, you'll realize that it's not really a remake. It's more like a pseudo-sequel to the original book by Lewis Carroll, and that's because this was never pitched as a remake. This was actually the pet project of a Disney exec who wanted a new take on the book directed by Tim Burton. The fact that it also happened to share a name and source material with a Disney classic was pure serendipitous coincidence. But when Alice blew up and made over $1 billion, well, Disney head honcho Bob Iger saw dollar signs and decided they could reimagine all of their old properties. Script issues and
Damn it,
scripting
I liked Alice in Wonderland.
way more of a remake than the mostly original Alice. But that movie did well, and thus the trend continued until we got here, with a basically shot-for-shot remake of movies like How to Train Your Dragon. But why did this trend get started? Why did these movies get so successful? Well, I believe there's a couple of reasons for that. Some that affect a very small number of people, and some that affect a lot of people. For our purposes today, I'm going to be calling this a reverse funnel. Some might call that a pyramid, but I'm not. Anyway, at the top, reverse funnel are the reasons that will affect the smallest number of people, and as we move down the funnel, more and more people are going to get drawn into the vortex of live-action remakes and the money they make. So, what's at the top of this reverse funnel? Serving the unserved. So I want to start this off with a little story. I remember in like 2018 or whatever, when I was in my mid-20s, a group of my friends and I were going to go watch Captain Marvel. And in front of us, there was like an entire row of girls that must have been teenagers, maybe like freshmen. I even heard a couple of them whispering like, "Oh my god, that looks super cool." That was a really eye-opening experience for me as an appreciator of film. And I loved that these girls were getting excited for cinema.
Yeah.
But that's also a big part of what's at play here. Tell me, how many really big-budget films, think like Marvel or Star Wars level movies, can you name that are aimed specifically at women? They exist, don't get me wrong, but how many exist? You have stuff like Barbie, sure, but what else? And how many of them are actually these live-action remakes? See, that is part of the strategy here, and the narrowest part of this reverse funnel. A lot of these live-action remakes are female-focused, both in terms of their characters, but also the audience that the filmmakers want to attract. And that isn't just me saying that. While explaining their reasoning for the Beauty and the Beast adaptation, a Disney executive said that while there are a lot of big live-action films aimed generally at a male audience, there aren't as many aimed at a female audience. Quote, Marvel has Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor. We have Cinderella, Snow White, and Belle. Pairing those characters with live-action talent and technology just seemed the smart way to go. Basically, there was a gap in the market. There were plenty of live-action blockbusters made with men in them, but very few with women. And if they actually served that audience, Disney could find success. And you know what? They were right. Beauty and the Beast's opening weekend ended at $170 million in the North American box office and $350 million worldwide. 60% of that massive audience was female, while that jumps to 72% when you just account for opening day. And Beauty and the Beast isn't alone here. Going backwards to that very first of these remakes, 55% of ticket buyers for Alice in Wonderland opening weekend were women. 53% and 54% respectively of people who watched the female-focused Hunger Games films Mockingjay Part 1 and Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes were women, while a massive 80% of the audience for the Twilight sequel New Moon were also women. And just looking at these last couple of months at the live-action movies that launched recently, 56% of the opening weekend tickets for How to Train Your Dragon were bought by women, and that number jumps to 63% for Lilo and Stitch. I could go on and on, but you get the idea. With all of this in mind, all of a sudden, a lot of the choices Disney made with their live-action remakes make a lot more sense, don't they? This is why there was such a big focus early on with the princess movies like Cinderella and Beauty and the Beast, or with female leads like Alice and Maleficent. They are specifically serving an underserved audience and, a lot of the time, reaping the rewards because of it. But that being said, that can't account for all of the success that these movies have, bringing us to the next tier of our reverse funnel, nostalgia cycles. So years before the plague, I was talking with a friend about YouTube analytics. Yes, we are very cool. And here I noticed that the popularity of certain games or movies or whatever kind of followed a cycle. We noticed that a lot of what was popular on YouTube in like 2012, 2013 were games popular in the mid to late 90s. Super Mario 64 and Pokemon and Ocarina of Time and Banjo-Kazooie. That sort of stuff. But as time went on, so did what was popular more into games from the early to mid-2000s. It was really rough, kind of back-of-the-napkin math back then, but basically it seemed like things that were released 17 years ago found popularity again in online spaces. We dubbed this the nostalgia cycle, and it's held pretty true ever since. Looking back, I think 17 years was a little bit too limiting. It's probably a little closer to like a 7-year span from around that long ago, and that was also very YouTube specific based on what was working on the platform, which in and of itself is completely unrecognizable to what it was back then. But regardless, the thought of that nostalgia cycle is definitely also at play here. The long and short of it is that people like what's familiar. Yes, sometimes they want something new and exciting. There's also a craving to see your favorite characters go on an adventure, or to return to a comfort world and explore it again. That doesn't necessarily mean it has to be with a new piece of media. I mean, how many people rewatch The Office or Lord of the Rings every year? But it can be with a new piece of media. I think back to those girls getting excited about Frozen 2 in the movie theater. Around that time, they would have been children when that first Frozen movie came out, and were absolutely the target demographic for that movie's sequel. So, okay, let's then fast forward, say, 10 years. Those same girls are now adult women. And if Disney did a live-action remake of Frozen, well, they might be first in line, right? Those very same girls who grew up with Frozen have a chance to relive that nostalgia with a new coat of paint. And again, this isn't just me saying that. The numbers also bear this out. 65% of the people who saw How to Train Your Dragon opening weekend were 35 years old or younger. People who would have been 20 at the oldest when that first movie came out. So, a lot of kids who grew up with that animated film came out to see the new one. Same with Lilo and Stitch, which had an insane 79% under 35 audience. People who would have been 12 at the oldest when that original came out. If I had to hazard a guess, this is also probably why some remakes do better than others. It's not a clean one-to-one comparison, obviously, but there is a slight trend of the live-action remakes based on films made during or after the Disney Renaissance doing better at the box office than those that weren't. I'm thinking of Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, The Lion King, and Lilo and Stitch, all as standouts. That's not to say that remakes of older films can't do well, like think Alice in Wonderland or Maleficent, or that it's a guaranteed success.
Well, neither Allison or Maleficent were remakes of anything.
Regardless, there is definitely a nostalgic.
They have many characters, but it wasn't the same story.
Based on ancient titles like Snow White didn't land with audiences. But while nostalgia is a powerful marketing tool, it's not the only reason these remakes can be successful. After all, eventually, all of the people who have that nostalgia aren't going to be around anymore. You need new fans to bring in new audiences. And, well, something else that these nostalgia cycles create in the final tier of our reverse funnel, the next generation. By bringing these IP back and remaking them at strategic points in time, there's a lot of potential for these movie studios to create cross-generational fans here. Here, let me explain. The best example of this I can think of is actually Star Wars. That's not a live-action remake, I realize, but I think it's just great to give you an example of what I mean. The very first Star Wars released in 1977, and if you were like 8 when it released, and you fell in love with it, well, then you would have been around 30 when the prequel started up in 1999. Just old enough to have maybe started your own family and take your kids to see Star Wars. And if that kid was 8 when the prequel started in 1999, they would have been around 24 when the sequel started in 2015. A little bit younger, but that's still in the sweet spot to potentially have started a family of their own and start this generational cycle all over again. The same thing applies here with these live-action remakes, maybe even more so because the Disney and DreamWorks animated movies appeal to a way wider audience than Star Wars does. I'm 31, turning 32 next month. Basically on the younger end of millennial, and pretty much everyone I knew in my generation growing up had seen and loved Aladdin, The Little Mermaid, Mulan, Beauty and the Beast, all that jazz. Well, us millennials are now the age where we've started to have those families, some with children old enough to go and check out these live-action remakes. All of a sudden, that's a great night out for a family, and an opportunity for parents to bond with their kids. Oh, you liked the new Aladdin movie, son? Well, here are 3 more on Disney Plus that I grew up watching. To Disney, this is creating an entirely new generation of fans that will keep watching these sequels, extending the life of their IP and their versions of these fairy tales again and again and again. And at least anecdotally, I can confirm that this is happening. Every time I've gone to a theater over the past few weeks, I've seen parents around my age with small kids dressed up to see Lilo and Stitch, or with toothless plushies in an absolutely packed showtime. Parents loved it, the kids loved it, and you're sure as hell Disney and Universal loved it. But do you know what these new cross-generational families of fans will do that's maybe even more important to these corporate execs than watching old movies? Going to see new ones? They buy toys, they wear merch, they go to theme parks, and they spend a lot of money doing so. Do you think it's a happy coincidence that Universal Studios opened up a new park and attractions based on How to Train Your Dragon at Universal Orlando just in time for the new movie to come out? Or that Stitch seems to be all over the Disney parks again? These remakes start cycles. Just like the original animated films caused kids to go crazy for all of the Disney Renaissance merch and parks and whatever, these remakes are doing the same for their kids. And in another 20 30 years, you'll probably see this cycle start anew with another wave of these. But even then, here's the twist of it all. They all work.
Twisted Tea fans love summer and the smooth, refreshing taste of Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea. Made with real brewed tea and just a bright kick of lemon flavor. But don't take our word for it, ask our fans. Twisted Tea, good times with a twist.
3 things on the stairs. Still not enough.
Always been making these. While yes, live action remakes of animated films is a relatively new phenomenon outside of a few exceptions, in one way or another, movie studios have kind of always been doing remakes. So, sort of. The actual phrase for these things is live action adaptation. And adaptation has been a huge part of Hollywood for its entire history. Like, there are tons of movies, pillars of cinematic culture that I bet you didn't realize were actually adaptations. Die Hard, Psycho, Jaws, Forrest Gump, Shawshank Redemption, Goodfellas, Blade Runner, Planet of the Apes, Jurassic Park, Casablanca, The Godfather? All of them are adaptations of books or plays or whatever. Now, I want to be clear. It is absolutely the case that there used to be more completely original films in the market. Stuff like Star Wars or The Matrix or Titanic or whatever. I'd also argue that a lot of these original films were in a mid-budget range of stuff like romantic comedies or thrillers that have kind of disappeared in today's market, but that's a theory for another day. And even then, some of the original stuff like Star Wars, The Matrix, and Titanic took a lot of inspiration from other works or real-life events. Like, sure, they weren't one-to-one adaptations and didn't take the names, and don't get me wrong, they were able to take these things in a wildly unique direction, but a lot of the same elements for a remake are there in one way or another. But we're getting off track. Regardless, if you sit down and think about this, it does make sense. Books, plays, fairy tales, they were all the culturally dominant thing in the 20th century and before. Most everyone read or went to a theater or told their kids fairy tales or whatever. Along with music or just good old conversation, it was the most widely available form of traditional entertainment in the world. It makes sense that when films started getting made, that they'd adapt these stories that people knew and already enjoyed. And, well, times have changed, and so does the media that people consume. Comic books became more popular in the 80s and 90s, so what did we start seeing in the 90s and 2000s? Movies that are adaptations of comic books, and I don't just mean Batman, Iron Man, and Spider-Man. Wanted, Men in Black, Push, 30 Days of Night, Blues the Warmest Color, Cowboys and Aliens, A History of Violence, all were comic book adaptations. Naturally, as we continue to move forward, it makes sense that these animated films, beloved by generations, would be adapted next. It also doesn't hurt that technology has finally caught up to animation too. In the past, a lot of what was done in animation was simply impossible to film for real, but with the advent of CGI, just how darn good it's getting these days, that limitation is gone. Thus, while we have a fully CG animated, quote-unquote, live-action Lion King. But hear me now and quote me later, don't be surprised when it goes even further beyond that. I've been saying this for years, but I also expect that we're going to see way more adaptations of video games and anime in the coming decades, because that's what's culturally relevant entertainment these days. Those are the new wells of IP to tap into. We've already seen this start to kind of come to fruition with stuff like One Piece, The Last of Us, and Super Mario Brothers movie, but the studios are just like outright admitting it too. The studio, A24, is currently working on adaptations of both Elden Ring and Death Stranding, and a rep for the studio went as far as to say that they're pivoting towards gaming IP and that they're, quote, the future of new franchises. What's the takeaway? What do we as lovers of film actually do here? Well, even with failures like Snow White, we're going to keep seeing these live-action remakes. Yes, because people go see them and they make money, but also because they legitimately fill a space in the market. I don't love that, but it's the truth. Don't be surprised when Universal looks at the success of How to Train Your Dragon and wind up the new live-action Shrek or Despicable Me. Or when Disney churns out a Frozen remake, or starts spinning on that adaptation again, or if they assign Pixar to create a live-action Toy Story and Monsters, Inc. If you don't want these to come out, vote with your dollar, just like we all did with Snow White. But even then, something else we can try to do is steer these remakes towards movies and franchises that can actually use it. There are tons of underappreciated animated films in the back catalogs here that could use a fresh coat of paint with a truly creative visionary at the helm. Some examples? Well, I truly believe that a remake of Atlantis: The Lost Empire could become a breakout success. It's a super unique world with a very engaging premise that they could play as an adventure mystery. The same could be said for Treasure Planet, or if they're really desperate, they could always remake Gargoyles. At least I'm going to see that one. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And cut. Up next on Film Theory. Do you have a Disney Disney Plus account? If so, did you know that because you agreed to this part of their terms of service, you can't sue Disney if you get hurt at one of their parks? Like, say, if you break a bone, or lose a limb, or maybe, just maybe, if you die.
This cereal is totally tubular. Wouldn't you agree, 90s kid 2?
Couldn't agree more, 90s kid number 1. The cereal's the bomb.
What do you think, 90s kid 3?
I mean, the cereal's fine. I'm just wondering why we're eating breakfast in a heavily graffitied alleyway. Like, did one of you actually carry these bowls, silverware, cereal boxes, and milk all the way from your house to this heavily graffitied alleyway?
You're overthinking this, dude.
Did we meet here spontaneously? Did we actually call each other to rendezvous for breakfast in a heavily graffitied alleyway?
I don't know, dude. It's the 90s, okay?
Stop saying heavily graffitied alleyway.
Why is only one of my overall straps buckled? Where are our parents? Hello, Internet. Welcome to Food Theory. Parents just don't get it. We theorize what we like. Now, I started this channel as a way to tackle the big questions in the world of food. Is a hot dog a sandwich? How many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Roll Pop? Does Chuck E. Cheese actually recycle its pizza? And as every 90s kid who ever ate cereal in a heavily graffitied alleyway knows, there's no bigger unanswered food question than this.
You named it Applejack. Shouldn't it taste like, well, apples?
That's right. Today, Food Theory is finally answering the question that's been lingering since Apple Jacks was introduced back in 1965. What does it taste like? Now, since the very beginning, Apple Jacks has said that it's cereal. A claim that they still make today, both in commercials and on the box itself. But as their famous ad campaign from the mid-90s points out, cinnamon and apple aren't the flavors that actually stand out when they hit your taste buds.
I don't get why you'd like a cereal called Apple Jacks that doesn't taste like apple.
We know why. Yeah.
Geniuses. Why? Good answer.
See, the net taste of Applejack cereal is something unique, something that's immediately recognizable but difficult to put your finger on. Decades later, we still don't have ourselves a definitive answer until today. Because Food Theory discovered a new
What are
way
we
to
making? Good question. A little bit of everything because we are out of time and panicking.
Cereal. You heard that right. I'm saying Apple Jacks is not really Apple Jacks. Follow me on this.
Although I'm probably gonna have to end the live stream soon because I have to go get some wooden skewers from the store that I've already been to 3 times today, and
including a sugar frosted
yeah.
version in 1952. That's today marketed to kids as
This is the last piece, so.
Frosted Flakes. In your part of the world, you may also know them as Frosties, Zucaritas, Sucralose, Corn Frosty, or Corn Frost. Now, as you might suspect, Kellogg's Frosted Flakes and Kellogg's Corn Flakes are the same cereal, aside from the fact that one has an added sugar coating and the other does not. This is all to say that a freshly toasted baby cornflake in the factory might wind up in either a cornflake box or a Frosted Flakes box, depending on which assembly line it gets assigned to. A comparison of the two cereals' listed ingredients also confirms this. Milled corn, sugar, sugar, malt flavor, salt, salt. And get this, not only are Corn Flakes and Frosted Flakes' listed ingredients, minerals, and vitamins identical,
How's your day going?
also listed in the exact same order. That's important because as the International Food Additives Council explains, quote, food labels are required to list all ingredients contained in the food in descending order based on the amount found in the final product. That is to say, if sugar is listed ahead of malt flavor, that means the food product contains more sugar than malt flavor by weight. So in this way, food labels allow us to compare ingredient amounts relative to each other. So why the heck am I rambling about Corn Flakes and Frosted Flakes when this episode is supposed to be about Apple Jacks? Well, hold on to your alphabets for a second, because here's the thing that for some reason nobody is talking about. Apple Jacks are Fruit Loops with an extra step, exactly the way Frosted Flakes are Corn Flakes with an extra step. I mean, look at the two cereals side by side. Wake up, sheeple. They're the same size and shape. They're the same shade of orange. They're the same shade of green. They're both Kellogg's cereals. If it weren't for the little specks of red, I defy anyone to try and tell them apart. And when we compare the listed ingredients of both cereals, it's like deja vu all over again. We see that every major ingredient in the two cereals is identical and listed in the identical order. As we get toward the end of the list, among the ingredients ingredients that constitute 2% or less of the cereal by weight, we do get a few differences. The colors, for example, are listed in different orders. This, of course, is to be expected because Fruit Loops cereal pieces come in a wider variety of colors than Apple Jacks. But coloring aside, it's clear that Fruit Loops is the base cereal, and any orange or green Fruit Loop pieces may be destined to one day become Apple Jacks once they receive an extra coating with red speckles that make them taste different. The fact that Fruit Loops were introduced a couple years before Apple Jacks came along also supports this theory. See, there is no listed ingredient in Fruit Loops that doesn't also appear in Apple Jacks. Keep in mind, maltodextrin, a flavorless binding agent, is sometimes listed as modified cornstarch and is also found in modified food starch. So despite that discrepancy in terminology, that ingredient is actually shared by both of these cereals. Furthermore, food distributors have some leeway to decide how to list out their ingredients. For instance, while modified cornstarch is only listed on the Apple Jacks label, that ingredient may very well be present in Fruit Loops under modified food starch, a catch-all term that does include modified cornstarch. But enough about the ingredients shared by both cereals. The ingredients of interest here are the ones that appear only on the Apple Jacks label: dried apples, apple juice concentrate, cornstarch, cinnamon, wheat starch, baking soda. Now, cornstarch and wheat starch are mostly flavorless, used to add texture more than taste. So basically, in the end, the ingredients that differentiate the taste of Apple Jacks from the taste of Fruit Loops are apple and cinnamon, just like the box suggests. And so this must be why the flavor of Apple Jacks is so difficult to pin down. It's a complex mix of flavors. Not only does Apple Jack cereal taste like apple, not only does it taste like cinnamon, but it also tastes like Fruit Loops, specifically the orange-colored ones and also the green-colored ones, ever since green Apple Jack pieces were added in 1998. I mean, that's a lot of different fruit flavors competing for your taste buds' attention, because as we all know, orange-colored Fruit Loops are orange-flavored and green-colored Fruit Loops are lime-flavored, right? I mean, sure, the label just says natural flavors, so we can't really verify that in any way, but still, there are oranges and limes plastered all over Fruit Loops commercials. Toucan Sam even explicitly states orange and lime are flavors.
I love that orange lemon cherry lime and berry flavor too.
Now, Toucan Sam only lists off 5 flavors in that clip, but here in the US we actually have blue-colored loops as well. Take that, other countries that have stricter regulations against artificial coloring. Naturally, I wanted to fact-check my suspicions that the blue loops are blueberry flavored, and that's when it happened. I stumbled upon information that completely changed my worldview. Folks, I honestly can't believe the words that are about to come out of my mouth because I can hardly believe it myself, but my research is telling me that Fruit Loops are all the same flavor. You heard that right, all the colors taste identical. I mean, I swear, as a kid I could taste a difference between each colored loop, but then again, I also swore that Berenstain Bears was spelled with an EI, the Bernstein Bears, so maybe I need to stop trusting my childhood brain quite so much, because apparently in 1999, Kellogg's revealed to the straight dope that their cereal pieces were indeed all the same flavor. And then again, in 2014, a Fruit Loops spokesperson admitted the same to KLTV7 in East Texas. The name of that flavor, Fruit, spelled with 2 O's, which is apparently a blend of fruit flavors. According to the Fruit Loops spokesperson, Fruit is a medley of exactly 7 flavors: orange, lemon, cherry, raspberry, apple, blueberry, and lime. That means Toucan Sam is technically telling the truth when he says there's orange, lemon, cherry, lime, and berry flavors present in the cereal. He's just being a bit misleading about the fact that every single cereal piece, no matter its color, contains a blend of all of those flavors. You know what though? I need to verify this for myself because I'm telling you, my childhood brain absolutely 100% tasted different flavors. And also I distinctly remember the commercials where loops were being extruded from individual fruit pieces. So I just can't take Kellogg's word on this one. Not when my own taste buds have told me otherwise my entire life. And that means it's time for a blind taste test.
So we are here today with the glorious task of determining what Apple Jacks actually taste like. Because as any 90s commercial will tell you, they don't taste like apple. And then, of course, the parents always like, well, then what do they taste like?
Right.
Why do you like them? And the kids never have an answer.
Right, there's never an answer to this question until today.
Yeah, they're always just like, we just do. And then everyone laughs them off because they're stupid kids. Have rationale for your likes and dislikes, people.
Those commercials always drove me crazy.
Me too!
It's like, well then, give them an alternative. If you don't want them to tell you it tastes like apples, then give them something else to go on.
Right? Even if it's like sugary sweetness, or like, why do you like them? Because they're crispy. Because they're fun little O's that I can make necklaces out of. Literally any explanation will do. The box is a great color. I don't know. In our
Skip the pricey produce aisles. and start growing your own veggies at home with Miracle Grow Organics. 100% organic ingredients for 100% organic harvests. Miracle Grow Organics. No better way to grow.
XL Refreshers. Do what feels fresh.
Our quest to determine what flavor Apple Jacks is, we stumble across the fact that Fruit Loops are actually the same cereal. Apple Jacks is just a Fruit Loop with 1 or 2 added ingredients. It's crazy, right? Which leads to the question of, well, then what flavor are Fruit Loops? And I swear, as a kid, I swear that every single color had a different flavor. The internet tells me otherwise.
Yeah, the internet, according to research online, Fruit Loops all actually have the same flavor regardless of what color you're eating.
To be fair, I wanted to put it to the test, right? Like, sure, online research is one thing, but the nice thing about having a channel to do this, we can do these tests ourselves. So today, we're going to determine whether or not Fruit Loops are actually the same flavor. Step 1, we're going to
Jump
flavor
to,
test
yeah.
each of these visually.
I have a
see
bunch
how
of
we can-
teeth and I don't know where
but
they
then
are
We're going to blindfold ourselves.
because
taste them
I
again
need
and
them.
see if we can
I
actually
need to make a bunch
accurately
of
predict.
little hangry monsters and I don't have
Taste
enough
them with eyes
teeth.
open, taste them blindfolded.
Yep, that's it.
And I don't know
Okay,
where to put the
red.
rest because everything's a
Cherry,
fucking mess.
Obviously. Yeah, cherry. Kind of, I mean,
Probably
cherry.
supposed to be cherry.
Cherry in the synthetic sense. Got a little sharp berry flavor.
Maybe on the back end. Maybe on the back end.
Okay, blue.
Okay, blue. What is blue supposed to be?
Blue should be berry.
What? Is blue raspberry?
And probably a blue
Is it
raspberry.
blueberry?
I would assume it's either a blueberry or a blue raspberry.
What do they smell? Do they smell different too?
This one tastes less sharp than the red. The red tasted sharper, didn't it?
Okay, and I think maybe this is tasting like blueberry.
Something's
Maybe.
happening.
Oh, it would be a very pungent blueberry. Lemony yellow. I know lemony
This
yellow.
smells lemony yellow. No.
Oh yeah, it smells lemon yellow. Oh yeah, well, that's definitely lemon yellow.
I think it tastes like lemon.
Yeah, that one feels lemon yellow.
I don't know.
Orangey orange, right?
This is lime?
That's supposed to be lime.
You're all sick.
Unclear about all of these. I think there's a difference. I'm not sure. The only way to know,
I think there's a difference.
right? Load up the blindfold. Here we go.
So Mac is blindfolded.
Alright, I'm gonna be back in a bit.
Each flavor.
Thanks for stopping by, guys.
Right here. So we